Building your first bike? Here's what nobody tells you. You are going to need way more tools than you think. But the good news is, I've got all of them figured out just for you. I just built this bike from scratch, so I know exactly what is needed. From basic essentials to specialized tools to the small stuff that matters, I got you covered. And by the end of this video, you're gonna have everything you need to start your own bike build. So, let's dive in. Let's start with the absolute basics. Without these tools, you literally cannot build a bike. First up, Allen keys. Pretty much every bolt on a modern road bike would require you to use a set of Allen keys. I bought a set of these silver-lined Allen keys from Amazon, and to be honest, it gets the job done. Next are torque wrenches, and here is where it gets a little bit interesting. If you're working with a carbon frame like I am, having torque wrenches is absolutely critical. Carbon fiber can easily crack if you over-tighten, but it can also slip if you under-tighten. Most people think you just need one torque wrench, but somehow I ended up with 3 different kinds. This 0 to 12 Nm torque wrench from Canyon is for the delicate stuff such as rear derailleur hangers, and this 5 to 20 Nm torque wrench from Amazon is for most of the bolts on the bike, such as seat posts, stamps, brake calipers, and so on. And this 5 to 60 Nm torque wrench is for the heavy duty stuff, such as tightening the bottom bracket, the rotor, as well as the cassette on the wheels. The best setup is to have 2 torque wrenches. One that can go from 0 to maybe 15 Nm, which cover most of the use cases, and another torque wrench that can go up to 60 Nm to cover the heavy duty use case. Now you might be thinking, if I already have a torque wrench with Allen key bits, do I actually still need an Allen key set? The short answer is yes. Most of the time you will use these Allen keys for quick adjustment and for tight spaces where normally the torque wrench wouldn't fit. Next up, lubrication. And here's what you need to know. Regular grease protects against corrosions and prevents bolts from getting stuck. The one that I'm using is a basic bike grease that I got from a local shop nearby. As for carbon paste, they create grip on surfaces so that you don't have to over-tighten bolts on your carbon parts. Without this carbon paste, sometimes parts such as seat posts can still slip even though you properly torque it. Now let's talk about workspace. You need a proper bike stand to hold everything in place. This bike stand from the brand Blue Chain holds everything steady while you work on your bike. An absolute lifesaver. You'll need both hands free for installing the components. Trying to do that while holding the bike is sometimes basically impossible. Other than that, what you will also need is an adjustable spanner. This tool is essential for tightening the hydraulic components of your bike, such as connecting the hydraulic hose to the shifters. You probably already have this lying around somewhere in your home, but if not, you could always get it from a local store or from Amazon or whatever. Now, let's move on to specialized tools. These are for specific jobs that you can't do with basic tools. First, let's talk about the cutting tool. You'll need both a hacksaw and a cutting guide tool. When you buy a frame, you almost always have to cut the stereo tube and the seat post to the correct length. And this top pick carbon hacksaw with 32 TPI blade is perfect to cut the carbon parts on your frame. It can be any hacksaw. You don't have to use a cycling brand specific hacksaw, but make sure you get the 32 TPI saw blade. And with this finer teeth, it's going to give you a smooth and a cleaner cut on your carbon components. And this cutting guide tool from a brand called Tosig will ensure a clean and straight cut on the carbon parts without damaging the fiber. Next up is chain tool, and there's 2 different kinds that you need. First up is a chain breaker tool. It is used to shorten the chain to the correct length. This tool is normally needed when you install your chain for the first time on the bike. And this over here is a chain plier. You use this to normally connect and disconnect quick links from the chain. Trust me, trying to do quick links with your fingers is super frustrating. These make it absolutely easy. Next up are cassette tools. What you have over here is a chain whip, a cassette lock ring, and an Allen key that can fit into the cassette lock ring. The chain whip holds the cassette still, while the lock ring can either tighten or loosen up the cassette. You will definitely need both of these when installing the cassette on your rear wheels. As for the bottom bracket, to tighten it, you will need this 16-notch bottom bracket tool. With this heavy-duty torque wrench, you could use the bottom bracket tool together with it to tighten up the bottom bracket on your frame. Now, let's talk about cable routing. A lot of these modern frames have internally routed cable in the frame as well as in the handlebar. So, in order to preserve your mental well-being while building your own bike, you will definitely need an internal routing cable tool. It is basically a flexible wire that you connect your cable to, then use a magnet to guide the wire through the frame. I actually managed to route the cable in the frame without using the tool, but when it comes to the handlebar, it's a whole different beast. The internal space in the handlebar is much tighter than the frame, so you definitely need the routing tool to navigate through the tight space. Now, if your bike is running on hydraulic system, you will need this hydraulic hose cutter and a needle driver. The cutter will give you a clean cut on the hydraulic hose, and the needle driver is essential to insert the barb into the hydraulic hose. In addition to that, for hydraulic systems, you will also need a bleeding kit. This is the one that I have from a brand called Easy MTB. After installing the brakes and connecting them to the shifters, you'll want to bleed the brakes to remove air bubbles and to ensure that the brakes is working at full strength. All the necessary items that you need to bleed your brakes is included in the bleeding kit. If you're working with disc brakes, sometimes you will face the issues that the brake calipers is not properly aligned. And this will ensure that the rotor sits perfectly in the middle of the brake pads when adjusting the calipers. What you also might need are these two tools. Sometimes life sucks, so your rotor might be delivered to you bent, or it might get bent during installation. But with the help of this rotor truing fork, you could use this to make the rotor bend straight again. And with that, you can prevent this annoying noise that is caused by the rubbing of the rotor against the brake pads. And finally, a tool that is used to push the piston into the brake calipers when you are resetting your hydraulic pistons. But if you don't want to spend extra money getting this tool, you could also use your tire levers to push the piston back in. And now, it's time for these supporting tools. Some of these items aren't absolutely essential, but honestly, they saved me a lot of frustration during the bike building process. Let's start with precision work. This digital caliper that I got from AliExpress. This digital caliper is especially useful during the time where I had to cut the steer tube as well as the seat posts. It is no secret that mounting the Continental GP 5000 tires on a wheel can be a lot of pain in the ass. It was nearly impossible for me to do it by hand, so at the end I had to resort to using tire levers. Most likely a lot of you guys have already owned a set of tire levers, but if you don't, I can highly recommend these tire levers from Pedro. Now let's talk about the tapes. The masking tapes is definitely useful when cutting your steer tube or your seat post. Wrapping a masking tape at the point where the carbon parts should be cut is very useful in containing the carbon dust. When you buy a handlebar tape, normally the finishing strip is always included as part of the package. But sometimes you might have an issue wrapping your bar tape which requires you to reopen the finishing strip. But sometimes the finishing strip is only usable once, so if you have to reopen your bar tape again, you will probably need an electric tape to reseal it. In addition to that, having a sandpaper will also be very useful to smoothen any sharp edges of the frame. And here's the thing that saved my entire build: a spare barb and olive set. My group set somehow arrived without the barb and olive included, and during that weekend a lot of the shops are closed due to holidays. And having spares meant that I could finish the build on that same weekend and immediately ride it without waiting days for spares. And the final thing that you'll appreciate having are gloves. Trust me, you'll definitely want to use this when handling greasy parts or sharp edges on the frame. So, there you have it, everything you need to build your own bike from scratch. So a lot of the tools I mostly purchase them from AliExpress. There are a few from Amazon and some from a local bike shop. If there is one thing that is worth investing in premium quality, then it will probably be the torque wrench. This tool is something you'll be using constantly for maintenance as well as future build. I'll also make sure to put the links to the tools that I use in the comment section below. And speaking of comments, let me know if there's any tools that is missing from my list. And don't forget to share any tips and tricks that you know that can make bike building much easier. And if this video provided you value and you enjoyed it, I really appreciate a like, subscribe, and drop a comment below. If you haven't seen my bike building process video yet, feel free to check it out. I've put a link to it in the description below. If you're starting your own bike build, I wish you all the best. Have fun in the process, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.